As you can see, we are very excited for our topic of conversation this evening, interactions for peace. I think for uh, many of you, this may be a timely season for this message too. And then for us at the Core Collaborative, as soon as that connection was made between Interactions for Peace and TCC, everyone realized it was really going to be a lasting partnership, because at the heart of Interaction for Peace, as they'll share with you, is this idea of really valuing and honoring each individual student and empowering them to take charge of their lives in ways that will last forever. And now I don't want to get in the way of our two experts. So we have Beverly and Sean with us this evening, and I know that they have something to get us started with.
All right, good evening, welcome. So to get started, we're just gonna to get everybody in the mindset of thinking about peace. In the chat, if you would, share your first name, where you're from, your role in your work, and then a little bit, just a word or a phrase about what peace means to you. So we'll give you a minute to
And
do that.
Beverly,
So
if you'll
I've
click,
got a slide
there's a
for
little
that.
reminder.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
I have a slide
that's a
for
lot.
that. Sorry, please share.
Share these
First
18
name.
things. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, thanks. Okay. All right.
All right. See, we've got Star on, co-director of professional learning with TCC, as well as being a publisher with Mimi and Todd Press, who has been working very closely with Interactions for Peace and knows this inside and out. And I'm thinking, I'd thought a lot about what peace means to me, but now I'm having to think. So while everybody's sharing theirs, I'll share some of these out, but let's just hear from the two of you, Sean and Beverly. What does peace mean to you?
All right. Well, I was gonna wait and read some of these answers because I have a feeling they're gonna be better than what I
Yeah.
was gonna say. But I'll go anyways. So peace to me is a really interesting question, and I started asking this question in trainings with teachers and administrators. Oh gosh, like 15 years ago. And to me at that point, I was thinking like peace is like the absence of war, or peace is, um, you know, not having conflict. But as I've grown, I think peace is learning how to move forward in a way that's inclusive, because we are going to have conflict. Um, and peace is not the avoidance of conflict, it's embracing it and using it to build relationships even stronger.
Wow. I think you nailed it.
Yeah, thanks. I've been working on that answer for quite a few years.
I was
Beverly, what about you? What's your thoughts?
Wow, I gotta follow that. To me, peace is when we address, because conflict and problems are part of life, and that's just part of living as a bunch of humans on this planet. So approaching problems with an open heart and with a spirit of love.
Nice.
I'm quoting both of you in these comments so we don't lose it. Love it. And as you can see, there's some trends in these responses we get, but each person does have their own individual take. And I'm seeing things like perspective taking, inclusivity, and creating a sense of belonging, right beside one that says it means like having tranquility and being able to coexist with others. Anything pop out to either of you through those comments before we move on?
I like the phrase coexist, right? And I've used that, and then I forget who it was. I think it was a sixth grader I was working with who said,
Mm-hmm.
well, instead of existing, why don't we co-thrive together? I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Um, and
Co-thrive.
I wish I could say that I took credit for that, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that's right on the money. Is this idea that, well, what you said first of all, that everyone has a different definition
Mm-hmm.
of it, right? Um, but at the heart of it, it's always about. I think Beverly used the most powerful word was love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't do any of this other stuff that people are typing in the chat right now without love.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed,
That's
agreed.
powerful.
I'm seeing
Yeah,
the
I
words
even.
acceptance. Go
Mm-hmm.
ahead.
No, no, keep going.
Acceptance and understanding in the chat here. In people's responses, I'm seeing the words acceptance, I'm seeing the words understanding, and those are words that we use in our Peace Patrol training, that we'll get into that a little
Mm.
bit more. It's part of the essential elements, and those are such important foundations. So I was happy to see those words pop up.
Well, that's a pretty good segue. Anybody else who wants to add your introduction, we'd love to see that. Thank you all for sharing that. And here's my question for you as well. What is Interactions for Peace? And I know you might want to talk about that picture a little bit, and then we can unshare so we can zoom in on the two of you.
Okay. Sean, you want to
Yeah, I'll go.
You want to take this one? Okay.
Sure, thanks. I was going to defer to you, but I'll go. What is Interactions for Peace? So, Interactions for Peace is a nonprofit organization. But what we really are is this this. Well, I think what we are is this belief that the best people to solve the problem are the people with the problem, right? And
Mm,
when we think of a school setting, often those are the actual students, right? So what we've done at Interactions for Peace is think about, well, if we really want to create these lifelong peacemakers, right, or these problem solvers, what skills do they really need to have, right? So if the idea is conflict resolution, we can kind of backwards map it from what are the skills that are needed. And that's
mm-hmm,
exactly what we did. We talk about self-awareness, cooperation, communication, conflict resolution, and then one at the very end is community outreach, right? And but it's the power of it is not that we just talk about it, but it's the lessons that are designed to that are so interactive and can be used from. I've done lessons with first graders all the way through sixth graders,
mm-hmm,
with grown-ups, with people
Mhm.
in college. I could do the same lesson, right? Because it's the interaction that makes it unique to the situation you're in. And that's what we are. We're a program that helps build peace, right? And
mm-hmm.
empowers really the individual that is involved. Beverly, can you add to that? Because you probably have a better, more
No,
concise answer.
I think that's perfect. So yeah, we're an organization that promotes peace and builds lifelong peaceful problem solvers of all ages, and we
Mm-hmm.
have curriculum ready to go. What the students in the photo that you just
Yeah.
saw are doing is they're working to be peaceful problem solvers on the playground at their own school, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's part of Peace Patrol, but it's not the whole picture, because as Sean mentioned, you can teach this to any grade level, any age, and it can be used in the classroom and throughout the whole school.
Mm-hmm. Well, and anybody who has any thoughts or questions as we go, please throw those in the chat, or let me know if you want to jump on with us. And you kind of mentioned Peace Patrol. Part of it is being these peaceful problem solvers, but there's more to it. So let's jump into that a little bit. Tell us what Peace Patrol really is, why you two think it's so important, and then what kind of impact it has.
Beverly?
Well, for all those educators, you know that working in a school, working as a teacher, I'm a principal of an elementary school,
Mm-hmm.
but this is year 28 in education, and I've taught in various grade levels at the elementary level as well as middle school, and worked in different roles. But as we know, conflicts arise, and one of the places that they happen is on the playground. And so when I was a elementary teacher, at the beginning of my career, Social emotional learning was always so important to me. And I was teaching, it was kind of came naturally to teach social emotional learning, even before we called it that. I taught my kids iMessages, and I was helping them learn to solve their problem. And my first students were 4 years old. They were pre-K students, but they can do it. And then when I got to the, up in first and second grade, and my kids were having problems on the playground, it was just sheer luck that I happened to be teaching in San Diego and ran into a training for Peace Patrol and was able to go to that training and then get Peace Patrol started at the elementary school where I worked in National City, California. And and it's transformative because it makes playgrounds more peaceful, and it's kids themselves taking that leadership role and being out there on the playground, helping others through these steps that we teach them to talk through what's going on and come up with possible solutions, and then choose a solution and try it out.
And I remember when I got to meet some of the students you've both worked with 2 years ago now, like kind of a year and a half
Almost
ago.
a year and a half.
Yeah. At Mindfueled, one of the things that really stuck out to me when they were sharing their stories is it makes sense to start this at recess because that's when kids do have the most freedom and they're the most in control of what they do. It's different than physical education or something where they might do some of the same activities, but it is much more in their control. And as an elementary person myself, I know that's where tempers can flare, and there's less structure by definition. It's recess. But it's funny that until I heard it from them, I didn't think, well, of course, that's a great place to start because they're already kind of in charge.
Right, exactly. And I think that's one of the benefits, right? And I that's like the place where the idea started from, is like, where can we support these students, right? But where the program really starts from is a school-wide approach, right? So like if you think about PBIS or like school-wide rules, right? The normal ones are like be respectful, be safe, and there's like 3 or 4 that every school uses in the all of the United States, it seems like, right? But what if we had changed those to be understand yourself and others, right? Cooperate with each other, use communication skills in a positive way, right? That's the foundation of what we do. So even though it starts on the playground, it really starts at a school level, and we build this culture, and then it goes to the playground, it transfers there, right? And that's where the kids get to really feel that empowerment because they're in control, right? And that as teachers, I know that my students are always in control, right? At any point, all of my students could leave the Zoom meeting, right? So easily, they just hit the leave button and I'm done, right? I can't get them back. And before COVID, they could all stand up and walk out at any point they wanted to, right? So how can we empower them in a way that makes them feel included, but lets them know that we're on an equal field on some level, right? Like we're a school of learners. We're not a school of teachers and students. We're a school of peacemakers, not differentiated by our status, but by our united by our goal.
That was sinking in for me for a second, that united by our goal.
Yeah.
And kids are naturals at this, kids are much better at this than adults are naturally. I think, children, I that's what I noticed. I mean, I think that it takes, there are several lessons that we go through. I mean, especially before kids go out on the playground and start helping other people out there. They're in some training, some pretty intensive training. But they're so good at it because they have that willing heart and they want peace. I think they naturally want, tend toward wanting to resolve conflict and help others and be leaders.
Yeah, and to add on to it, like just right now, I'm thinking about as an adult, a along the way, I learned all these ways to kind of hide the conflict or move away from the
Mm-hmm.
conflict or pretend things are okay, right? And maybe the kids haven't picked up on those skills yet, and they're just ready to learn. And we
Mm-hmm.
have the choice of what are we going to teach, right? Are we going to teach them how to hide and conceal these feelings and how to pretend conflict doesn't exist, or are we going to teach them to embrace it? And that becomes a very powerful question when I am having to ask myself, what is it that I want my students to learn? Because I am potentially impacting the rest of their lives by what I
Mm-hmm.
choose right now or what I don't choose.
And we just had a question. Can you reiterate how you did that when you said, like, every school has these same things, but what if we switched them to this? And also, is that a good time for me to pull up the 5 essential elements?
Yeah, you can because,
That'd be
um,
great.
yeah, the reworded rules were based on the essential elements, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is that if we can embrace this as a community, then everything we do should reflect our values, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so instead of saying like be safe and be respectful, um, we'll have to go back to the recording to see exactly what I said.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to say it differently now,
No,
but
that's
it's
fine. Yeah.
um, like I be aware of who I am and who others are, right?
Mm-hmm.
We will use cooperation. We will use communication in a way that helps everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are just the simple things, and those three things lead to conflict resolution, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if the goal is conflict resolution, I need to know who I am and I need to know how I'm feeling. Um, I need to cooperate with people, um,
Mm-hmm.
which is easy to do when the stakes are low. But as soon as my feelings have been ratcheted up a bit, it becomes a whole lot harder. So now I have to even cooperate with my own feelings
Mm-hmm.
before I can cooperate with other people and their feelings, right? And then I have to communicate it in a way that is actually, um, I'm going back to first grade, making the problem smaller instead of making the problem bigger.
Mm-hmm.
In fifth grade, I would say that is de-escalating and as
Escalating the
opposed to
problem.
escalating the situation, right? Um, and that all ties together. And I really do think that a school could base their PBIS rules or their school-wide rules just on these three foundational skills within the essential elements.
Mm-hmm.
And so
And
the lessons that we
so,
have can be
Yeah.
used, all these lessons can be used
mm-hmm.
school-wide. The lessons that the Peace Patrollers are taught can be used school-wide as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you're really changing the whole culture of the school.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. How does that work? Because I know you use these lessons with people. Like, share a little bit about your experiences and what you've seen change with the students. You know, things that seem to work really well, seems things that are a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Go
so
ahead, Beverly.
go ahead.
Oh,
Well, I was
all
just
right.
going to say the essential elements are sequential. So
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness and confidence is the foundation, and that's where we're learning to share our diverse identities and be proud of them. So this really goes along with a lot of the social justice work that we're doing now as well. And along with that also is understanding our feelings and being able to identify those
Mm-hmm.
and manage them as well as others' feelings, right?
Mm,
And then and so that's step one, and that's really, I think, what we do school wide the most is that
Mm-hmm.
is the lessons in for essential element number one.
yeah. And just like thinking about the impact it has on students. I was at the Mindful conference, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe we saw each other, Isaac, at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
I think we had about 12 seconds to pass each
right.
other.
Um, but one of the students up on that stage was my former fifth grader.
Mm-hmm.
And right, at the beginning of fifth grade, he he was very anxious. Um, Brilliant student, brilliant kid, very creative, but just wasn't sure of who he was and how he fit into to our classroom or to our school as a larger entity. right? And luckily I was his teacher because I do these lessons with all of my students every year, right? Um, and about halfway through the year, well, he did join Peace Patrol, so he got some of these lessons
Hmm.
twice. But he started to realize, he's like, whoa, okay, it's okay that I'm really nervous right now before I take a math
Hmm.
test. That's okay. I understand that feeling, and now that I can understand that feeling, I can um, kind of move on with it, right? I can work with it. Before, I had no idea. And
Hmm.
actually, at one point of the year, um, we do a reading program called Achieve, which is online and it's nonfiction. Um, and he started to really get worried again, and I, I came up to him. He's like, Mr. Chumbley, I've already got 2 questions wrong. If I get one more question right, I won't get the 75%, and I won't pass the article. And if I don't pass the article, I am is going to drop my level, and then I'll probably have a
Hmm.
hard time because my confidence will be shattered, and it's just going to be this downward spiral. And I just looked at him and I said, okay, so figure out what you're feeling. He said, well, I'm really anxious right now. Okay, how can I help you with that? How can we cooperate together? So, well, you can sit with me right now. I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
we can do that. And we're talking about it right now, so we're good. And I'm also going to let you know that I kind of, and this sounds bad, and I know I'm being recorded. Um, I kind of hope you do fail right now on this Achieve article. And he just stopped, and if that had come from any other teacher, Mr. Chumbley,
Yeah.
I would have been devastated. But I know what you're doing. You're helping me understand that this problem we can still move on from this
Hmm.
problem if it happens. Well, that's exactly what's happening right now. So, okay. And then of course he did fine, right? But
Hmm.
that's just that's the power on a micro level skill, right? Or micro lens is that,
Hmm.
right? Because I took this time and built this culture in my class, he felt like he had the power to move on, right? And then a year later, he's up on the stage sharing his story with a room full of 400 people in Coronado,
Hmm.
right? And he led the swag bag, by the way. That was like the highlight
Yeah,
of
yeah,
his
nice.
elementary school career.
Yeah. We'll get him back next time we can be face to face. So that really kind of pulls together, I think, some of the different things you guys have shared, that this is something you do as within the system of the school. It's not just something that's happening here or here or here. And then some people may do more of it than others. It may be the Peace Patrol is getting it, but like you said, Sean, you're doing it in your class too.
Yeah.
But that it's not just about the patrol or even about the whole school. It is about these individuals. So I wonder,
Mhm.
and if we've got any questions out there about any of these five too, but I wonder if you've got any other thoughts or examples that that tie to these. I'm especially curious. I know we're going to talk about this conflict resolution and transformation a bit more, but I'm especially curious about this right now, the parent and community connections, just because working with people all over the country, this is something we're hearing is difficult this year. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, um, peace begins with each one of us, but it spreads, through our community in our classroom, our
mm-hmm,
community at our school, and then it's a natural next step to want to bring that into the larger community and share with those in our neighborhood, in our city, share with the families of
mm-hmm,
our students. And so, just as an example, at the school where I am the principal, I was fortunate to get a principalship at a school that's had a peace patrol for a couple of decades. And so they have a long tradition of going to a nursing home each December. And they have this partnership with this care facility where they go and they sing carols, the Peace
mm-hmm,
Patrol. And so they've continued this nonstop for over 20 years. And so this year they were determined that they wanted to go, but of course virtually. So they did. They practiced
Mhm.
diligently for a couple of weeks, and they had to kind of work around the fact that you can't sing in unison on Zoom.
Right.
But they were able to problem solve that too and cooperate, right? And they had the confidence. And I was able to see them perform for those residents
Mhm.
today. And it was truly, truly heartwarming. So that's just an example of some of the connections.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and another example of that community connection is a few years ago, one of our Peace Patrol members, his family is from Iran, um, and they had an earthquake there. Oh gosh, 4, 5 years ago. I don't
Mhm.
even remember now. Maybe more than that because he's in college now, so maybe like 10 years ago. Um,
It goes
all right,
fast.
yeah, I'm off on my timeline, folks.
Yeah.
But he was a Peace Patrol member, and he wanted to do something to support people from his
Mhm.
country of origin, his homeland, and we through Peace Patrol, he saw like what can we do, and he was a Peace Patrol member, and we worked together. And we're like we can do a fundraiser, and what would that look like? And the kids problem solved that, and they decided to sell those at that point those bracelets, those silicone bracelets
Yeah.
were
Uh-huh.
really popular, right? So we did a fundraiser for that. We bought them off of like the Oriental Trading Company, I think.
Mhm.
My wife got them from there. We sold them for $1 each. We ended up raising over $500 to send to the earthquake relief fund, right? That's what it's about, right? Because because all of the previous lessons talk about like I need to know who I am. I need to feel like I'm
Mhm.
part of a group, right? And this last one hits on the last cornerstone of what it means to be human. Um, that I feel like I'm contributing to something larger than me or the group I'm a part of, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the fact that Beverly had her students singing to the retirement center, right? The fact that we have students raising money for people they've never met in a country that
Mhm.
most of the students never heard of before, right? Or if they heard about it, it wasn't in a positive light,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And here we are going out and beyond who we are to do something that I couldn't do by myself or that any of the students could do by themselves. But when we work together, we can reach something larger than who we are.
That's powerful. And how cool in both those situations that the kids have found a way, like you said, to take charge
Yeah.
and to find solutions to things that they care about, keeping those connections and then reaching out to support others. And you've mentioned a few times these lessons, and I know uh, that you've got a couple for us, and I shared them the uh, in the chat. There's a link to the handouts. I'm going to reshare that too. But I know that you had a few things you wanted to talk about, and tell me if you need me to click on faster or slower.
Mhm. Um, so the one of the wonderful things about these lessons is that when Sean's students are in Sean's class and they learn they're taught these lessons in class, and then they might go to another teacher to school, and that teacher might use the Peace Patrol curriculum as well. They might do it again, and then when they become Peace Patrollers, they do them again. You can do these lessons over and over and learn
Hmm.
something new each time. So that's one of the wonderful things about them, and they're deceptively simple, and they're also very experiential, which is why it's too bad that in this particular format, we can't really have our participants experience them in the moment. But one lesson that you've received in those handouts is the 5-minute talk out.
Hmm.
And the point of this is one of our lessons in communication. And it's a real challenge, and you learn a lot. And like I said, I learn something new every time I do it, every time I experience it, either as a teacher or as a
Hmm.
participant. But it's about listening without interruption, listening without changing the topic, and really listening, what we call whole body listening. So you're listening not just with your ears, your eyes, your heart, your whole body's listening. Um, and the really important thing to mention, if you do go ahead and try these out, and I do recommend trying them out, you can do with any age including adults. I enjoy doing this with staff. Is to not leave out the reflection piece. The reflection questions are perhaps the most essential part of the experience. So always, always. And that was one of the nice things today after the Peace Patrol advisors, after the experience at the retirement center, they had the kids reflect on their experience. And I think that reflection piece in life, and no matter what we do, is always when we learn the most.
And it's such an easy piece to feel like I've run out of time.
And the beauty about the 5-minute talk out is it takes longer than 5 minutes. That's a misnomer because you do have that reflection piece. It says about 10 minutes, but really what it forces, and I do this at the beginning of every year with my students, because so many teachers have this rule in their classroom, or this expectation that attentive listening or respectful listening, or whatever word you want to put in front of listening, right? And this lesson actually breaks it down to what it looks like and what it feels like. And it teaches them, but it comes from them, right? So they're, once again, in charge of what does listening actually look like. So it would be, we'd pair each other up, and in Zoom we could do it in breakout rooms, or in person you just turn to your neighbor, or however you want to set that up. And so let's say, Beverly, you'll pretend to be my partner, and the teacher says, all right, Sean, for 2.5 minutes you need to listen to Beverly as she talks, and Beverly can talk about whatever she wants, but your only rule, Sean, is you cannot interrupt her, right? And then we do that, and she talks for 2.5 minutes, and I have to bite my tongue. I have to do whatever it is, because I want to talk about my grandma too, or I want to talk about the vacation that I took, or I want to talk about this because that happened to me too, or I want to ask a follow-up question because I really want to know more. But sometimes those follow-up questions are more selfish, because we're guiding the conversation where we want it to go, as opposed to where the speaker wanted it to go, right? So it's all of this stuff that I now have to be aware of. And poor Beverly, if I don't know, if she doesn't feel comfortable with awkward silence, what's going to happen at the 2-minute mark when she runs out of things to talk about? Just like right now, we had to be okay with that silence. And someone probably wanted to jump in, right? How does that work? So then we asked the question. The teacher would say, all right, Beverly, what did Sean do that showed you that he was listening? Yeah, maybe I was leaning in.
Yeah.
Maybe I was
A
nodding.
lot of head nodding.
Maybe
He
I
was looking at me.
smiled at the right time, right?
Uh-huh.
And then we talk about the feelings associated with both perspectives, and then we switch roles. And then that way I can look for those behaviors in Beverly, and we chart it. And now we have a class list for the whole year of what does it mean to be a good listener in this classroom. We know it, we've experienced it, and we know why it's important, right? Those are the kind of lessons, right? Sometimes when I think of a lesson, I think, oh my gosh, this huge, like 45-minute chunk, and it has 6 different steps, and I have to do this and that. Sometimes it's just an experience, a well thought out experience with a well thought out reflection after that, right? They're not time consuming, but they are all consuming in the fact that we include experiences and reflections and ways to move forward with it.
We were fortunate to get some funding through a Rotary grant and go to Kenya to teach teachers there how to implement peace patrols in their schools, in schools around Nairobi, both public and private, and Interactions for Peace is taught as well in Philippines and some other places. But the reason I bring that up is that one characteristic of these lessons is that they can be done with almost no materials, because they're designed to be able to be taught basically anywhere. And so that's just another one of the beautiful things about the Peace Patrol curriculum, is that you don't need a lot of stuff. You need the training, you need the Peace Patrol book, and a heart for the work, but you don't need a lot of materials.
That's so powerful. We had a question from Kenda, which you hit on a bit, and I know we've got another lesson to look at too, but it basically said, how can we do this in this virtual environment? And I know one of the responses we had on Facebook to that is if the teacher must be in hybrid, but they said they have part of their class. And since they can't sit close and partner talk, they've changed the volume level. So instead of saying you're on a level 1 or a 12-inch voice or something, now they're saying like you're on a level like 2.5. So you can talk to your partner through your mask a few feet away, but we're spread out enough that we can do that. But I think what the question was probably hitting more towards what you started to say, which is when it's full virtual or for those kids who are at home, even if you have hybrid.
The lessons can be adapted. Sean, I know you've been doing a lot of them in Zoom. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is more challenging, but really what I've discovered, and maybe this is my own personal journey that I'm taking, it's how much do I trust my students, right? Because when I have them turn to their neighbor and talk in the classroom, I can walk around and I can see what they're doing and hear what they're doing. And they see me, and there's like this physical reminder of what they should be doing, right? When it comes to Zoom, and I use Zoom for teaching, I have to trust that their breakout rooms are going to stay on topic, right? And I send the reminder through the chat, right, or through the announcement in the breakout rooms, what they need to focus on. And I get into some of the rooms, but not all the time. But what I've noticed is they're on topic, right? They want to they want to be engaged, right? Because they spend so much of their time at home not engaged with other people, right? And if I can structure it in a way that is purposeful, it's even better. So that like the 5-minute talk out, I've done virtually, right? Some of it I've turned more into an art lesson. One of the lessons, where do I come from? You get to make like a personal flag of like your heritage and things that are important to you. I turned it into a 2-day art lesson, 2 week on Fridays. And then they got to share their projects with each other, right? So they're like, these lessons can be done, and it just goes back to what is the problem? Who has the problem? It's the teacher. And how can I work with the systems that I have to make sure that I still do the things I want to do? And we can do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know we have one more lesson we want to look at, and then we're going to get to a great question that came in too. But tell us just quickly about these dialogue bubbles, and then we'll take a look. And just a reminder for everybody, these are in your handout that's in the chat or on the, oops, just spaced the wrong thing. Or in
Actually,
the comments.
I think this one I can show.
Oh,
do you
great.
want me to do the demo?
Yeah, perfect.
Dialog Bubbles is a really fun tool. It has a lot of different applications, but I think in this PowerPoint, if I'm not mistaken, we can actually show. So hopefully all the clicks work.
They do.
So you have this empty template, which is just 4 quadrants, and there are 2 people talking. So the purpose of Dialog Bubbles, as the slide shows, is to really learn about which language escalates or de-escalates a conflict. Okay, so when we start out, we start with a common conflict, and we usually the group comes up with the conflict. We'd say, okay, what are people usually saying in this type of conflict? You push me. So then what, if they were escalating the conflict, what would happen next? You cut me in line. And then what would happen? No, I didn't. You're a liar. And the kids come up with this. And of course, they're very good at it. They've heard this before. They may have even participated in it. So we go on, and you always cut, dummy. I was there first. You're just being a baby. I am not. You're a stupid face. Um, at least I'm not as dumb as your mom.
Whoa.
And then the next one, we had to put that one in all characters because at that point we know it's escalated so far that they're going to use some language they shouldn't be using. And we asked the kids, why are there only 4 quadrants here? Well, it's because what happens is the conflict going to continue to be verbal after this point? Well, probably not, right? Okay, so now we're turning the paper over and we're saying, okay, it's the same conflicts, the same people, but we're going to use the language of peace and we're going to de-escalate this conflict. You pushed me. You cut me in line. Has to start somewhere. The piece has to start somewhere. So now we're actually communicating a little bit. No, I didn't. I was there and then I went to get water. Oh, I thought you were cutting me again. It makes me mad when you cut in line. So now, we're using that language of feelings. I should have said I was going to get water and asked you to save my space. Yeah, that would have been better. I'm sorry. You want to sit by me at lunch? Yeah, cool. So this is something that they practice in Peace Patrol training. And so they're coming up with them, they're writing them down, and then they're acting them out. And so that's a way to practice that language of de-escalation. But I've used this lesson as well as a principal just when kids are having a conflict and I want them to work it through. So I'll pull out my Dialog Bubbles sheets and we'll actually script what happened and how did this escalate? We'll turn the paper over and then we'll script, we'll flip the script literally using the dialogue.
Yeah, it took me a second there.
So that's and was that in the handouts, the Dialog Bubbles lesson? Did that come or no?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to check.
Yeah. It's the first one, I think. Yeah.
And
if not, I'll make sure they get that too.
Yeah. And just to add on to what Beverly's saying is that it's a lesson that you use all year long after you introduce it. Right. And filling out the first side, escalating, is fun for the kids. And easy for them, and then when you do flip the script, it's really hard for them, right? And that's the side that we need to practice more. They don't need more practice on how to escalate. We're naturally pretty good at that, I guess. But that second side, like coming back to it throughout the year, and I even did when I was a first grade teacher, and there's not really a first grade lesson, but I know the lesson. When we were reading books, I'd say, oh my gosh, these 2 characters, whoever they are, really having a problem. Like, let's think about how they could have talked differently to each other to make the problem be better or make the problem smaller, right? So those ideas aren't just limited to the bubbles, right? It becomes a way of thinking about everything that you do in the classroom.
And I just double checked. The other lesson we had in there was what I like and respect about me, but I bet we could share out the 5-minute talk too. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. My memory's very good, just very short. So we've got a great question. I think some of this will tie into some of the conflict resolution too, and how the students kind of help determine what the conflicts are they're addressing. But we had a good point here, which is a lot of times acceptable behavior becomes very white centric and very middle class centric. And then maybe could you touch on, like, with that in mind, how you build an understanding of each other and for others through culturally responsive practices? Sorry, my tongue got a little twisted there.
No, that's fine. Beverly, you want to take a stab at this one? And you're muted, by the way.
If you hear background noise, it's my terrier mutts are a little excited right now about this event. So in the first essential element and throughout, but this is a subject very near and dear to my heart. So the social justice work and the Peace Patrol curriculum are, I mean, they're one and the same. They go together. That fits with everything that we're doing around social justice at our school, fits so well with the Peace Patrol curriculum as well, because this is about understanding and acceptance, and it's about kids understanding their own identity, valuing others, learning about the beauty that comes from the diversity in our community, and really not just accepting but embracing it, and leveraging the strength of diversity in problem solving. So but and this is Peace Patrols are really, in Interactions for Peace, the curriculum is very constructivist and takes into account the perspectives of the individuals in the community, which are the students and the families and the staff. And so it needs to be, it's they're deciding what their goals are. They're deciding what they want their school community to look like. We're all doing that together. So it's going to be very necessary to listen to all voices, and like I said, embrace diversity. I hope that helped answer the question.
No, I think, well, I think you did, but but I'm not Autumn, so I don't know. But I think what you remind me of, Beverly, is that it's done with them, right? None of this is done to them or for them, right? We are creating this culture together, and when we create something together, everyone's voice is part of that, right? And how do we make sure it's not white centric? Is that, as a white person myself, is I have to be willing to put my understanding to the side for a little bit to see what it is that this group of people I'm working with wants or needs, or the things that I need to make sure I appreciate and value, right? And it kind of goes to the idea of attentive listening, which we were talking about earlier for the 5-minute talk out, right? In some cultures, maybe it's not appropriate to respond. Maybe it's not appropriate to have eye contact with an elder, right? I have to know that. I have to know my students and the cultures that they come from, right? So how do we make sure it's not white centric? Is I check my own white box at the door, and I have to be curious and understanding of the people I'm working with, right? That's the only way I can prevent it from becoming what I believe is right. And for some people, attentive listening means adding on to what's being said, right? Or chiming in, say, oh, "That's right, teacher, I agree with that." I have to know that that's their way of doing it. And as a class, we talk about it and talk about how that is still respectful. But at sometimes we might have to switch over here for a little bit. Sometimes we might be way over here. Sometimes we're kind of in the middle. And if I only, the more I read, the more questions I have. But if I only do it my way, it's a disservice. If I only do it their way, it's a disservice. If I can balance it and help them switch from different situation to different situation, I'm empowering them to have the skills that will be needed for future success, right? So there's this whole balance, and the first element is self-awareness. And for that piece to not be white-centric, it's teacher self-awareness that needs to be built, not student self-awareness. At least in my opinion. Right now. Tomorrow, after I finish another book, it might be something different. But right now, that's my thinking.
That's my quote for the night: is the more I read, the more questions I have.
I have.
So we did have a question earlier, and I postponed it because I knew we were coming a little bit more specifically even to the conflict resolution. So I thought this would be a perfect way to kind of wrap up, is to talk about how, well, I'm just gonna be quiet. Talk about the steps.
Well, there they are.
Yeah.
These are the basic steps. The Peace Patrollers learn these, they practice them, they do a lot of role play, they do a lot of discussion in their training. And then when they are working on the playground, they have a checklist. So it's going to remind them what the steps are, and reminds them what they say to the those individuals who are getting help with their problem at each step of the way. But this is the basic process that they learn, and they and through repetition, it becomes really second nature. And then the beauty of that is that this extends to other aspects of life. And we have our peace patrollers in their homes, helping mom and dad when they might have a disagreement, and taking them through the problem solving steps. So
Yeah.
that's our vision.
Yeah, and the checklist the students have that are peace patrollers out there solving or helping facilitate the solving of problems. Um, it's more detailed than what this slide shows, but it provides them that structure and that routine, right? And if we can provide a routine for students when things are escalated, it can just bring comfort, right? To the people who are Peace Patrol members helping these other students in crisis, because that's stressful. I'm a fifth grader, and now I have to work with these third graders who are almost in tears. I don't know what to do. Well, I fall back onto the checklist and back onto the training that I've had, right? And what the checklist really does, it helps students, the people who are having the problem, the disputants, really analyze the situation, right? There's a space for both of them to share their story, right? And that's what kids really want when things are going wrong. They want to know that they're heard. And then the peace patrollers validate that, and they say, well, it sounds like you are upset because, and they say it back. Am I correct? And the third grader or second grader says yes. And you just start to see the tension lowering.
The tension, yeah. And
Right?
sometimes sometimes that might be it. Sometimes then the bell might ring, but that was enough.
Right. And to be honest, I've used this checklist that I pretty much have memorized with parents who might have been upset by something I may or may not have done. Although that's hard to believe, right? Like, why would a teacher be upset or a parent be upset with me?
Yeah.
It happens every once in a while, right? Or another colleague, or even my own children at home. And my wife is a Peace Patrol trainer too. So we have like the perfect marriage, right? Because we don't hide the conflict, we embrace it. And when she messes up, I help her walk through the steps.
Good at.
Yeah, thank you. That was a joke. I know jokes don't always transfer online, so I apologize. It's usually me messing up. But it's a structure and it's a routine, and that's the point, right? That conflict resolution can be accomplished if we have the skills and we have a structure in place that allows it. That's it. That's what we do. We provide the skills and provide a structure to work in the system that you want to create for your school, right? And you said earlier, it's more of a systematical approach, Isaac. And it is, and we have to remember that whatever results that we get from our students, right? Whatever results the system gets, the system is perfectly designed for those results. And if we don't like what's happening, or we don't like how the students are interacting, we have a responsibility to change that system, right? And we can. We have a way. And it's called Peace Patrol.
Yeah, I love it. That really wrapped things up nicely. Thank you both so much for your time and energy tonight, but also doing this work day in and day out. It's so much fun for me to hear about it. And I have to admit, when I first heard the title, Interactions for Peace, I thought, that's something I want to be a part of. And now, over the past couple of years, I've gotten to learn so much more. At TCC, the Core Collaborative, we're a learning network. So we hope that all of you who are on with us will stay in contact and share things. Maybe you want to be one of our expert panelists sometime, or lead a core chat. We have lots of things we're excited about right now. Restored and Connected. Some of our thought partners have really structured their approach to understanding and healing and I think it's a great match for a lot of what we've been talking about tonight as well. Similar to Beverly and Sean's approach to empowering students to take charge of their learning, we know many of you are learning from your desk at home or your phone in the car, and so we've tried to offer a lot of opportunities. One thing just for fun you might want to check out is one of our authors we love, John Crownapple, in Authored and Inspired Star, who was on earlier and still on, I think, does these great interviews. You learn about the author, and you also learn about what drives them, what their passion is, why they chose to write about what they wrote about. Every Tuesday, we would love for you to join us on our hashtag core chat, on our Twitter chat. You can see what's coming up, and we're excited about those. Also, we're always looking for people to jump in and lead them, to moderate. And because we've all been navigating a different world, which is true every single year, but I think this year has just drawn our attention to things like Sean said. We built systems that are not working for our clients, for our students. And so with some great leadership in our team, we've developed this approach called Clarity for Virtual Teaching and Learning. If you find you're struggling a bit in this virtual environment, we'd love to work with you on that, help you get some clarity around goal setting and social emotional learning. And we actually have, just getting finished up this week, the Empowered Learner e-toolkit, which we're very excited about, and offers some guidance and some ready-made transferable lessons, a lot like what we've been talking about tonight, but for literacy. And as we've ended the last couple of these, of course, you get an opportunity if you've got a parting shot or a final word. And I'm going to open this up to everybody out on the chat too. But Michael Ian Black had a podcast called How to Be Amazing. And I'm not a big podcast guy, but I've listened to every one of those, some of them multiple times. And he ended up with the, I think he called it the Amazing Five. But the big idea is he would just ask for recommendations. He'd say, like, what's something from your life that you would recommend to others? So I want to end on that kind of light, fun note. And I didn't know what Sean's Christmas sweater was until he adjusted a bit. But I think maybe this may have something to do with one of his recommendations. We'll see. Beverly and I were talking Star Wars before you got on. Yeah. So what do you guys have to recommend to our network? And same question to everybody out there on the chat.
I have a book to recommend. It's called Into the Magic Shop, and it's by a physician named James Doty. That book is life-changing, and a lot of the things, it's autobiographical, but a lot of the things he talks about, though, are really connected to the work that we do in Interactions for Peace. But if you want a book that is just going to make you think about how you can be more focused and open your heart and really make a contribution in life, that's the book for you.
Wow. And I see it's on Audible too.
And I did listen to it on the way to work for, that's how I read it. It's the Magic Shop. That's my,
love it.
my big recommendation today.
All right. A book that was transformative for me was Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. It was an awesome book. I do cry, like if I watch a Pixar movie, there's a good chance that I will cry. But when I read her book, I like broke down a few times. And then I had the wonderful privilege of sharing that with the staff and got to break down in front of all the teachers that I work with. But it's good because I was being vulnerable. And that's what it's about, is about shame and vulnerability and living the life that you deserve, right? It was a great book.
Those are powerful. Now, do you have anything else you would recommend as we leave off? I love doing the books, but since many of us are going to be spending holiday time, things like that, anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I've got one more, which is I've started a meditation practice since the pandemic started. I mean, I was supposed to
Mm-hmm.
start this meditation practice when I started as an administrator, and it just really never took off. And I've tried different apps, but the app that's stuck for me is Waking Up by Sam Harris, and it is the best meditation app out
Yeah.
there. And so then now I'm listening to all of his interviews, and that's where I'm finding a lot of these authors I'm reading. He talks to just some really brilliant people, so that's my recommendation for a podcast is Waking Up.
Oh, podcast.
Awesome.
I'm gonna plug a
I mean,
TED Talk.
that's an app. Yeah.
Oh, an
Yeah,
app.
yeah.
And he has
Mm-hmm.
a podcast and an app. That's why I get them confused.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we will allow that. Um, there's a great TED Talk video. I love TED Talks. It's by Sean Achor, Achor is his last name, and it's The Happy Secret to Better Work.
Mm.
And he just kind of focuses on this idea of how so much of what we focus on is negative stuff. And if we just flip the script, we could bring happiness to our own lives. And one simple suggestion that I always have my students do is at the end of each day, write down 3 things that you're thankful for that day, right? And you do it for 21 days, and you train your brain how to look for the positive, right? Even in COVID-19, I still have at least 3 things I can write down each
Yeah,
day of good things.
that's so powerful. Well, thank you both, and thank you everyone out there. Even though we can't see you, we know you're there, and we appreciate your thoughts and questions. Anytime you have other thoughts or questions, just reach out to us. I'm Isaac at thecorecollaborative.com, and I can get your questions to these 2 wonderful people. But as we sign up, this is our last masterclass for the year. But as always, we want to thank you for your time and attention. Those are your 2 most valuable assets. And we wish to all of you that you have an opportunity to be with people you love in the next few weeks, and that you stay safe and healthy. We look forward to working with you in 2021. So thank you, everyone.